Good morning. Welcome to the March 17 meeting of the 2020 California Citizens Redistricting Commission. Our meetings are from the 16th through the 18th this week. I am Jane Anderson, your chair. Our vice chair is Ray Kennedy. At this time, please call the roll.
Commissioner Fernandez, Commissioner Fornashari, Commissioner Kennedy,
Here.
Commissioner Lamons, Commissioner Sadwani,
Here.
Commissioner Sanai,
Here.
Commissioner Taylor,
Thank you. Present.
Commissioner Toledo,
Here.
Commissioner Turner, okay. Commissioner Vasquez,
Here.
Commissioner Yee,
Here.
Commissioner Ahmed,
Here.
Commissioner Kutagawa,
Here.
and Commissioner Anderson.
Here. Good morning, all, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. At this point, I will report back. We did have, we ended in closed session yesterday. The commission took no action, and we will move on to our next item, which is every morning when we start a meeting, we ask the public to call in with any comments. So Katie, at this time, could you please read the instructions for public comment?
Yes, Chair. Good morning. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the Commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 918-3469-1695. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. And at this time, we do not have anyone in the queue.
Okay, thank you very much. We will wait just a few minutes and let the live feed catch up with us. At this time, while we're waiting, are there any comments from the other commissioners? I understand Commissioner Sadwani's articles is out in the Post this morning, Washington Post. Congratulations. Commissioner Fernandez.
I just wanted to add Director Hernandez know that I am present. A minute late, but present.
Thank you.
Oh, and
And
I
the
hope you see me as
oh.
well.
The instructions are complete on this stream, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, Commissioner Turner, what was that?
I was just ensuring that he saw me as well.
Perfect, thank you.
You're the greenest one.
Well, I don't believe we were going to get any comments in this morning, so at this point, we will continue on with the
Chair,
agenda.
we do have a caller. Right,
Oh.
right as you said it.
Thank you.
The person that just called in, if you would like to make a comment, could you press star 9 to raise your hand indicating you wish to talk? Thank you. And the floor is yours.
Hi, this is Deborah Howard calling in from the California Senior Advocates League. I am calling in related to the conversation yesterday regarding transcripts, and I'd like to go on the record vociferously in favor of the commission deciding to do that. I think the commission as a whole and individually is working extraordinarily hard and diligently on process, just on outreach and education, the Legal Affairs Committee, language access, all of those threads that you've spent so much time on, that process that you've put in place will be lost without transcripts. It's sort of like you've put all of the weight into the process, but the content that you're going to be capturing through those activities is going to be lost, say for anybody who, has the capacity to watch hours and hours and hours of video without knowing, they're really just looking for a needle in her haystack. And I truly think it would serve the commission better as well in just knowing what decisions you made when, by not keeping regular, kind of standard minutes, like small boards and commissions do. You lose the historical perspective of how the conversation evolved. So I can go on. I just think it's a really important component. I think it's a convenience for the public. You are 100% focused on public inclusion, and yet this seems like an odd line to draw. So that's my comment, and I appreciate your consideration of that. And as always, the work and the diligence you put into it. I know that is an overwhelming task. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sinai.
I think that the caller brought up several great points, and I'm really curious if this wouldn't be a good student project. I know I spent hours doing similar things right out of college, and I learned so much when in my first job at Human Rights Watch. And as much as it's tedious, I'll also learn a lot about process. So I'm just curious if getting a few students to work on that piece wouldn't be a great way to get it done, and to also educate the future generation on what we did.
Thank you. That's an interesting idea. There are several more technological solutions which we were just presented with a while ago, and that's all going to be given to our, I believe it's the Administration Finance Committee. Is that who's looking into this? Yes, I'm seeing a nod from Commissioner Fernandez. And there are a few more very, very pertinent ideas that have just come across this morning that will end up in their lap that might make this much, much easier and, of course, cost effective, which is one of the reasons why we don't just automatically do it, but it turns out we might be able to do it better and cheaper. So thank you for the comment from our Ms. Howard. That's very pertinent and very important to the commission. We appreciate that, and we're on it. Thank you very much. Are there any other callers?
No, Chair, that was it.
Thank you. At that point, I'd like to move on to the item number 10 on our agenda, which is the Legal Affairs Committee update. That's Commissioners Yee, Toledo, and Sadwani.
Thank you, Chair. So as you know, we are planning to hold interviews for our VRA Council and Litigation Council, 6 candidates, and those are scheduled for next week, Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, we have reserved for deliberations, and we hope to have a recommendation to you for our meeting on the 29th. In the meeting handouts for today, you have our proposed questions for VRA Council and Litigation Council candidates, as well as a evaluation worksheet. And today we wanted to finalize those. Also want to let you know that we have, our paralegal has prepared a background verification of the campaign contributions, bar memberships, lobbying activity of the candidates, and prepared reports, which were sent out to those candidates this morning. We invite them to respond to those verification reports by the end of this week, or Sunday night, actually. And any response they give will be posted as a public comment. And the verification reports themselves will be posted as public comment as well, along with these interview questions. So today we mostly wanted to verify finalize the interview questions and the evaluation worksheet. Also, per earlier discussion, I believe we will indeed have a Deputy Attorney General present during the interviews, and we'll be providing legal support for that, because that would be redundant with our current counsel. I think the recommendation will be to have just the Deputy Attorney General at the interviews. So let's see, Commissioner Sawani or Toledo, anything to add before we look at the questions?
Sure. Thank you so much, Commissioner Yee. And thank you for chairing for this month. It's really exciting to see you in this role. Before we begin reviewing the questions, I think it's exciting. It's very exciting for us to have the opportunity to get the feedback from the full commission. We, of course, are simply an advisory committee, and we'll be providing a recommendation to the full commission after the interviews. I did want to actually ask Marian, while we have her here, about our procedure in moving forward. I see she's gone off camera, actually, so perhaps she's not available right now. Through the analysis and due diligence there she is, collected on all of the applicants. So if you recall, we had received a letter suggesting that perhaps the applicants had additional items that had not been reported. We took that very seriously and have had Tina Keller, our paralegal for the commission, looking at, as Commissioner Yee had mentioned, a number of items for each and every individual listed on those applications. In particular, one of the things that we found is that for two of the VRA councils, the lead counsel, the lead individual actually is not admitted to the bar here in the state of California. We had discussed this to some extent previously in the preparation of the RFI, saying that they don't need to be based in California because the VRA, the Voting Rights Act itself, is a federal law. And so experience and expertise in the VRA is what we're looking for. However, my question for Marian is if she can provide a little bit of guidance on how we can proceed with applicants who are actually not admitted to the bar in California. They are, of course, a part of larger teams that are admitted to the bar. So I just wanted to get her advice on whether or not that's problematic or how we should proceed.
Well, the problem is that unless you're admitted to the bar in California, you cannot provide legal advice in California. So if those lead counsel
I'm not hearing you, Marian. I apologize. I think you cut out a little bit.
Yeah, Marian, we've lost you.
Well, we can see you.
Ms. Johnson had a car emergency, so that's why she's not.
Oh, dear.
Here.
Marian, you may want to try turning off your video so that we can hear you better. Yeah. And I think we lost you at, so the problem is.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah. Oh, and now
I think we just lost her.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps I think it's okay if we want to move on, and then perhaps when Marion gets back, we can return to this question. I would be.
You know, though, as a professional engineer, that is true. The same thing is no, you cannot do that in the state of California if you're not a registered engineer in the state of California.
That's right.
You can work under someone else, but you cannot directly. So they could not be the lead. And I'm pretty sure that's what you'll end up coming back to say.
Correct. I saw Commissioner Toledo also had a thought on this.
Just while we wait for Marion, maybe we can touch bases on the public comment we received from Angelo Anchetta from 2010. I don't know if there's any discussion that we might want to have about that. He just brings up the point of provisions in the Voters First Act about favoring or discriminating against political parties, incumbents, and candidates, which of course has to do with the impartiality aspects of our requirements, and is suggesting some line of questioning around some of the VRA and redistricting criteria, and potentially some of the cases that might have led or are leading to minority vote dilution. And of course, the comment is on our is posted on our website. I didn't know.
Yes. I will pursue that, but I think we have Marion back. If you're connected, Marion, you can pick up with, you left off at the problem is.
We need a new battery. Can you come out here and deal with him so I can get back on Zoom?
I'm sorry, what?
We need a new battery. Can you deal with, here's my cards. Can you?
Well, I gotta put my shirt on.
We hear you now, Marion.
Yeah.
And your assistant.
Why don't we move on and wait for Marion to get back?
Yes. Okay. So the memo from our predecessor, Angela Anchetta from the 2010 Commission, suggests that we add a bit more language in the questions to inquire about the use of partisan election data. And as you know, we will be employing racially polarized voting analysis at some point in helping us comply with VRA requirements. So that's racially polarized voting. The polarized there is political polarization. So on one hand, we're not allowed to use partisan, favoritism in designing our districts. On the other hand, with RPV analysis, it comes into the picture. So the question is how to balance that. And we actually have a national expert in the subject in the form of Commissioner Sadwani. So
I apologize. I'm having car problems, so now I'm back on my cell phone. Did my answer come through before about how you have to be licensed in California to give advice?
Yes, and then you started with the problem is, and that's where we lost you.
Started with what?
The problem is?
Oh, the problem is that if it's the chief attorney who's not able to give legal advice, that I think is a real problem.
So presumably their intention is to, channel their lead attorney's advice through someone who is bar certified. Is that workable, do you think? Or is that really a showstopper?
Well, that's up to the commission. I would think that if you're not able to get advice from the the primary attorney, that's a problem.
Okay, any further thoughts on that question?
Commissioner Fernandez?
I'm just wondering if that's like that would be a question that you would ask maybe during the interview, just to see how they would work around that.
I can.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Sedwani.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Commissioner Fernandez. I mean, it's one of those tricky pieces because I think it needs to be a follow-up question because it doesn't apply to all three candidates evenly. We could certainly ask the question of all three candidates, but in particular, you know, for the two where this is the key issue, they wouldn't be able to be the lead counsel. And so I certainly question. And then I think we did have a question about, and I'll look more closely at how you'll work with the commission, and perhaps it can come up in that regard as a follow-up question for them.
Oh, I don't have to call on myself. Calling on myself. And one thing we have to watch out for is, because certain engineering, they try and do the same thing, is another person who really is not the lead, but they have the license. So they say, oh, well, this is all coming from them. And I don't think that's, you know, there's a term for that. I don't recall what it is, but I heard it mentioned in the law before. That's completely unacceptable in the law. It has to be the actual lead attorney has to be licensed. So, you know, if you're getting all our, you know, the person who's actually recommending and doing all the work with us is not licensed in, you know, not able to practice law in California, they can't use someone else's title. So that is more of the specifics of that question. And actually that's something we could ask everybody, because do we know, do they actually have their bar numbers up there, that sort of thing? It's just, you could be a generic question for all three. It doesn't have to be specific. So
That's right. We could inquire about the verification report we produced for each candidate. Okay, any other discussion on that point?
I guess, if I may, the key issue here is we will continue to interview them, even though we've flagged the fact that for two of these candidates, they have individuals on their teams who are not admitted to the bar in the state, as opposed to removing them from the applicant pool. And I think I just want to ensure that everyone is comfortable with that, with us proceeding in that way.
Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Chair. I saw a lot of nods of affirmation, but I just wanted to voice that I would not be comfortable moving in that way. If it's something that will cause an issue or that there is a workaround that we're having to do, knowing going in, I would prefer not interviewing them and not moving in that path.
Yeah, for me, I would prefer knowing, you know, are they well aware of, now, is this a person on their team, or is this, you know, one of their leads? I mean, is this like, you know, number 2, number 3, or is this number 1, number 2? I don't know how they're proposing to put the team together.
If I may, I think that we would learn more about how they would actually work together from an interview. But at the same time, I also hear Commissioner Turner in that concern. I mean, if I can go into the details, I know all of their applications are public, and we've searched their bar status publicly, and those, I believe, Commissioner Yee, the reports that the paralegal put forward will be released. Is that correct?
Right, they've been provided to the applicants as of this morning, and then we'll post them publicly tomorrow.
And we will be posting them. So I'm not sharing anything that's, you know, of a personnel matter by any means. For example, Chad Dunn from UCLA's Voting Rights Project, who has presented for the commission previously, is not admitted to the bar in California. He was based in Texas. He's now affiliated with UCLA, but the other attorneys on the team are admitted to the bar here in California. So, I think it's a reasonable question to ask them how that they would then work. But I'm raising this because I think it is a key issue that I think we as a commission need to make sure that we're all comfortable with, certainly before we come back with a recommendation. And then I guess just to add the other one, not to single out one of the applicants, there is another applicant, Kareem Creighton, who previously, I was surprised to learn that he wasn't admitted to the bar in California. He previously was a professor of political science and law at USC. He's no longer living in the state of California, is my understanding, and is no longer admitted, or I assume that he was, but I don't really know if he was, at what point he was admitted to the bar in California.
Commissioner Kennedy and then Commissioner Fernandez.
Just as a theoretical possibility, I mean, it may be that some of these individuals have allowed California bar memberships to lapse and could easily reinstate, or may be able to obtain admission through reciprocity with the state where they are admitted. So I'm okay with interviewing them as long as we're all aware of this issue, and as long as we ask them, what if they're not currently admitted, what their proposal would be for gaining that status so that they could advise us. Thank you.
Commissioner Fernandez.
And we also had Commissioner Ahmad, but I'll just go quickly. Sorry.
Oh.
I support moving forward with the interviews, as long as it's not like just one person that's admitted to the bar in California. And I would really be interested to see how they respond to that. I mean, if it's just one person that is not, and then they've got maybe 5 or 6 that are, then that's doable, because they can also do research and provide whatever other support they need. But I think we should still move forward with the interviews.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. I think we should move forward with the interviews, and this whole situation about being licensed in California versus not. That's something we can ask them. I do think that there should be a standardized protocol if, for example, not saying this is what it is, for example, if our primary contact has to be bar licensed or something like that, or whoever, however they structure their organization in working with us, there should be some way that we can ensure that we are getting advice from a legally sound method moving forward. But I don't see, holding off the interviews at this point as something that needs to be done, considering it's an interview to see if they are eligible, right? So that's just my thought.
Commissioner Sinai.
I'm going to ask a legal 101 question, and you might have answered it, but just sometimes, as Commissioner Taylor has said in the past, I need repetition. So if you don't mind repeating it. This is about the VRA, they're going to help us figure all this out. But then when the main question is, when the maps get sent to court, they will need to represent us in court. The court, it would go first to the California Supreme Court, and then it would go, if it continued to move up the ranks, it would eventually go to the federal Supreme Court.
If there were a federal issue, it would go to the Supreme Court. But if it were just a California issue, if they complied with not an issue of Voting Rights Act, but something else, there also is a possibility for in litigation to get admitted for the purpose of a single case.
Okay, so because in the past we've been told we need we're looking at big law firms, national law firms, because they need to have the Supreme Court experience, and so we've been constantly balancing, we need that Supreme Court experience with, we need the California bar. And so I would tend to agree with the colleagues that are saying, the reality is we need a diverse team, and some people may have that California bar and some people may have the Supreme Court, but we need both on our team to be successful in the long run.
Yeah. If I may just respond to that a little bit.
Yes, please.
I think that's a really helpful kind of insight and also a reminder. And just as a reminder, we're looking for two separate teams. So one will advise on the VRA component, which again is federal law, but to advise in California, we need people that are bar certified regardless, right? We need that to get the attorney advice. At the same time, we're also interviewing separate teams just for litigation purposes. And ideally, such a team would be able to very successfully defend the commission and the maps, either in the California state courts or in the federal courts, potentially if something were to arise, and going all the way up to the Supreme Court. I'm hoping that doesn't happen, but it's always best to have the strongest legal team possible and be prepared for it.
And the two firms mentioned earlier are VRA applicants, not litigation applicants.
I do have a question here. The actual issue isn't so much, it's federal experience. It's actually voting rights experience. It's not Supreme Court experience, because hardly anyone has Supreme Court experience. It's actual, because the Voting Rights Act is a federal issue, so it doesn't have to be strictly California, because California is its California Voting Rights Act. The actual issue is, if they are not certified to give legal advice here in California, and our maps are based on, our Voting Rights Act maps are based on that advice, that's an issue that they could be challenged on. And that's the issue, as I see it. And I think that's what Marion was kind of trying to say, but I know in terms of engineering, I know things have been thrown out, because that's nice, wonderful, you're not qualified to say that, so everything you said doesn't matter. Next, and in our case, it could be our map.
Okay.
So, sorry, they're not. They're not based on sound and touch.
That's the triple.
So, sorry, that said, I still think at this point we should ask, how are they putting themselves together? Because if they have not considered this issue, then yes, that's a reason, like, thanks very much for applying, we just can't use you. If they have already thought about this in great detail, that would be another matter entirely. And that's what I would be expecting to hear. So I'm sort of in the idea of going ahead as well. Commissioner Turner.
Thank you. Appreciate Commissioner Ahmad's suggestion to ensure we have protocols or guidelines in place, et cetera. Because what typically happens, or what can happen, is we'll get vested into this conversation and into the time, and everything's a timing issue always, of course, with our commission. And we do have already, we've heard from Marion, we do know what the cost, I just don't want to get too far down this path and then the time has passed on, and then we're making decisions based on the time that we have available. And so I can support the interviews. I want to be real clear that we're clear in what counsel they're able to provide and who's going to provide it. And I don't want us later to make allowances or move forward based on a lack of timing and not, maybe going, the names that were mentioned, the name wonderful, all of that's great. I don't want us to later be in a time crunch and make decisions based on time.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Yes, please.
The problem is, as Commissioner Anderson was saying, is the giving legal advice pre-litigation. And unless you're licensed in California, you cannot provide legal advice in California. So you could not rely on them for advice, for example, in how to draw your maps to satisfy the Voting Rights Act or to satisfy the California requirements. Now, it could be that when you could exclude that person from the legal opinion process, but in my mind, that would be difficult if it were the lead attorney.
And in Marion's response is exactly the point that I'm making. So that is the point. That is why I want to make sure, and I guess I can rest on protocols. I just want to make sure that, well, I guess I'm repeating myself at this point, but yes, based on what Marion has said, what she's offered up before in the discussion that we're currently having, I think the questions will have to be very detailed, specific. We'll have to be real clear on who's going to provide what. And at some point, regardless of the other strengths and value and merit that they bring, if the answers are not suitable for or fall within the guidelines that Marion has stated, then I think we should pass and move on, and then we'll be back to trying to have someone else apply.
One way to look at this is if the person does not have a California license, essentially they're a paralegal. They're not attorneys, and that's sort of an easier way to kind of think about that. They might, and while that's nice advice in things, it's like, me giving you legal advice. It doesn't have any weight. It might be really, wow, it sounds like a great idea, and that's how we should think about it. But again, I would like these people to say what their plan is, and if they have a very good plan and that we like that plan and we're comfortable with that plan, as Commissioner Turner is saying, then I think we should go ahead with them. At this point, but I think it's very clear the committee's getting this message is those questions better be really good, because we're really going to be looking at that. So Commissioner Sinai.
I'm just trying to still wrap my head around this. For the VRA piece, which is what we're discussing right now, a lot of it is the racial vote, RPV, it's research versus legal advice. I mean, the team has to be able to do the research piece, and then part of the team has to do the legal advice. Or is it all considered legal advice? Because when you started all of this, Commissioner Yee had said, well, Commissioner Sidwani does a lot of this in her day job, but she has a PhD, not a legal. So I just want to understand that in this case, a team may have someone who doesn't have a legal background but has a PhD, or am I totally off right now? I'm just trying to think through how people could put together teams.
Commissioner Sidwani.
Sure, thanks. So theoretically, yes, a team certainly could. And one of the things that we haven't finalized yet in this process is who would actually do our RPV analysis, the racially polarized voting analysis. And I do want to talk more about that in the letter from Angelo and Chetta as well, which we began to talk a little bit about. But in general, you're going to want an attorney with experience in the Voting Rights Act to understand more about what the courts have said previously about what's allowable and what's not. That's not something that I feel like I crunch the numbers, someone else with more experience actually in the courts or within within the system of voting rights compliance, perhaps, will be able to bring more to bear on what we anticipate being allowable, right, under the courts if we were to be challenged from a VRA perspective. What is it that the courts have said about districts that were drawn compliantly or not, and how do we defend ourselves against such lawsuits? So that it's that combination of both technical and legal advice when we're actually drawing, as I see it.
Commissioner Sinai.
Sorry, one last question. I'm just trying to really, when I worked with military families, one of the biggest challenges was that military spouses who were licensed in one place and then their active military got moved around a lot. And this became a huge issue. And so a lot of around those who were licensed or whatever, yeah. So federally, this became a big issue, and they were looking at legal, teachers, and others, not just for military spouses, because they couldn't just make an exception for one group, but they were looking broader. And I don't know where that has gone, that whole movement, but I just wanted to put that out there as well, because things are changing in regard to some of these very strict guidelines that the states have set up, because they have been they've kept people out like if they're supposed to, but they've also made life very difficult for people.
Commissioner Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. And I guess this question directly for the Legal Affairs Committee is the question that is being asked of us if we are comfortable moving forward with the interviews, knowing that not everyone holds a California bar license. Is that the question?
That was the
so,
initial.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like we're all comfortable with that, with moving forward, so long as we're asking the appropriate questions about how the teams would work together.
Okay, got it. And then just a follow-up on that. And I don't know enough about the legal world to have an opinion one way or another, but I wonder what the process is to get that license in the case the commission would require that. And that's just something for you all to consider during your interviews.
So what I'm hearing then is, we consider this a major impediment to have a lead attorney that's not a member of the bar, California bar. And so we will inquire about this. And since it's a major impediment, we're looking for, a very, if the candidate is going to move forward or be considered a thoroughly satisfying response to how that major impediment will be dealt with.
Commissioner Toledo.
And so I saw it a little bit different than asking about comfort. I saw it more to just alert the commission that we do have a couple of candidates to inform and to make sure that you are aware of, and especially because we have been doing due diligence, and this is just something that came through in our due diligence process. The interviews have been scheduled, so they had been scheduled previously, and of course we wanted a feedback from the commission in terms of questions to ask, especially in light of some of these conflict of issues type questions and other type questions that we have uncovered in our due diligence process. So it's not just whether they're licensed, but whether some of these other conflicts in terms of impartiality that might have arisen. And you have the questions that we have developed so impartiality, conflicts with regards to political donations or cases that they've been involved in, that sort of thing, is really what we're seeking feedback on, is my understanding. And correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Yee and Sadwani. It's just we want to make sure that we have a thorough vetting of the conflicts of interest, the impartiality aspect, and of course also the licensure component of that. And that's all part of this due diligence work that we're doing, and that our paralegal and legal support team has been conducting.
That's correct.
As we launch into interview process next week.
Well, thank you for alerting me on this. I appreciate all your work, and good luck on the interviews.
I just want to go ahead and say, just because I also see this as you're sort of educating all of us in terms of the importance of each decision, and when you don't know the particular rules, it seems like, well, a good teacher, why can't they do the same? We can just learn from them, but there are particular rules about why. And I just want to say, because I do follow how licensures work in different groups and states, and with the law, basically getting a California license and a New York license, those two states are essentially dominant, and they have very, very different rules. And so while if you have a California license, it's pretty easy to get licenses then in Arizona or states kind of around us, which sort of similar. New York, part of the same. It's very hard the other way around because you haven't had that experience. So basically, my understanding is, except for a Supreme Court judge or something like that, is the only way to get the California license is to take the California bar, which is a whole nother, sets of exams, and the same with New York. So it is a big deal. Now, as Commissioner Kennedy said, if you had the license, let it lapse, that's another issue. And not all professors have the licenses. And that's true in all the different fields. That's true in medicine, that's true in engineering, that's true in many of the different fields. So in terms of licensure fields. And it is a real problem. Thank you, Commissioner Sinai, for bringing that up about the military. That is an issue. So that's for this kind of everybody's understanding of, well, it's easy, you just do that. That's not an easy step to do. And thank you, committee, and please continue.
Okay, so shall we return back to the questions? So we did get the public comment from Angela and Chetta. And let's see. Okay, there's Mr. Samani. So I would like to propose adding part of a question to satisfy the concern he raises. And I have it worded here. So how would you advise the commission to use or not use partisan election data in pursuing VRA compliance and defending its work? So once more, how would you advise the commission to use or not use partisan election data in pursuing VRA compliance and defending its work? And adding that to one of the questions on the VRA, perhaps question number 6 on the VRA interview questions, and adding it to question number 7 on the litigation questions. But I think Commissioner Sidwani could probably give us more detail on the concerns being raised here.
I mean, my understanding from what I read of Mr. Anchetta's comment had more so to do with the perspective that the 2010 Commission took around not touching anything that's potentially partisan. We haven't gone to that length. I mean, we've had a conversation even from our outreach standpoint that we think it's appropriate to talk to local parties and such things as well. I wanted to go back. I think so. I forget who had mentioned racially polarized voting, meaning polarized politically. That's actually not the case. Racially polarized voting suggests that a community votes together, that they themselves are supporting a particular candidate, that they're polarized in that way, not necessarily from a partisan standpoint. Yeah, I mean, conducting our PV analysis requires using vote returns. We will know the registration of the voters, but what we would be looking for is our expectation of their race, right? Are they Latino voters? Are they Black voters? Are they Asian American voters? Less so do we take into consideration in conducting our PV their partisan affiliation, though it would mean that we have that data. And we would be looking at candidates who are Democrats and Republicans, right? So I think in that regard, yes, we would be dealing with partisan data, but we're looking instead at how do communities, particularly communities of color, who are their preferred candidates, and are they able to elect them? I'm fine with it if we want to include the question on there. I don't have any strong reservations to it. But as I read his comment, it had more so to do with the fact that they ran into this issue because they had this kind of strong barrier up. I think the 2010 Commission operated quite differently than we are operating. And so therefore, I understand where he's coming from. I'm not certain how necessary it is, but I don't have a problem including it.
So was the thought that, the analysis would be, does this block consistently vote differently than the surrounding block? And it really doesn't matter which way the difference points. I mean, it doesn't even matter which parties are in play, just that they're different.
As I see it. And again, I haven't conducted RPD for redistricting purposes previously, but yes, I mean, that's how I see it. When I conduct analysis in Orange County, you'll see communities sometimes supporting Democrats and sometimes supporting Republicans. But the question is, are they voting together the majority of the time? Even though sometimes they might flip-flop in terms of their candidate of choice. So I don't have a problem including the question. I think as you've worded it, it sounds appropriate.
Okay.
Commissioner Toledo, he had.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the question 7 on the litigation council is very tries to get at the same type of issue. The question about, and that's the question that is talking about whether. I mean, I think it even referenced at some point the beginning of that question. I think even referenced the Santa Monica case. I think we took that out, but essentially, how would you defend the constitutionality of majority, minority, influence, or coalition districts that the commission may draw? It's trying to get. I think it's trying to get at the same type of issue that Angelo raised. I'm just wondering if we need both.
Right. I was thinking of adding,
or how different they are. Yeah.
I was thinking of adding the more specific question at the end of that question, actually.
I'm sorry, what question number is it?
Number 7 on litigation.
On litigation. Sorry, I'm looking at the array.
Commissioner Sinai.
Just out of curiosity, in looking at the teams, are the applicant, it feels like to date, when people talk about all of this to us, they've been predominantly white males. Are the applicants reflecting the diversity of California and some of the issues that we're trying to, some of the communities that are affected by VRA?
They're all different. In our evaluation worksheet, we do speak of overall fit to CRC identity, values, and goals. I think that would cover part of those concerns. But the different teams are all different.
I actually did see Mr. Anchetta's comment a little bit more like both like Commissioner Sadwani, but I really liked that Commissioner Yee wanted to put that additional question in there. I support that because I actually read it as though he was flagging, as Commissioner Sadwani said, the 2010 completely divorced themselves from any looking at political party. And you do, as you're looking at the voting rights analysis, but it shouldn't be emphasized. And I believe looking at particularly people who come in from not California, they do tend to say, well, the Republicans did this and the Democrats did that. And they tend to view in the polarized analysis, often comes quickly into talking about the Democrats and Republicans. Well, see, they all want to vote for a Republican. They all want to vote for a Democrat. And I think that's an issue in terms of in California, we really are looking at do they vote as a group, as Commissioner Sadwani was saying. And I kind of got that as him making sure that how they're framing, that we ask questions to see how they would frame the information given to us, because then that is indeed how trying to separate the party part of it and use the party part of it, but you're actually talking about voting rights analysis, not. And he also kind of says a little bit like, because watch out, a lot of people have just used this as a ruse for political advancing political parties. And so that's how I saw it, which I really like. And I love the question that they are written. I prefer with Commissioner Yee's addition to it. Let's qualify that a little bit more. So that's how I read his public comment, which I thought was a very valid point. We do actually have to specifically talk about the parties, because again, in California, we don't necessarily push parties. We're talking about how the voting changes, and it can, as Commissioner Sadwani said, can change from one candidate to another candidate. Are the different race groups, are they voting together in blocks or not, and that combination.
So shall we say we'll add that further bit of language to an appropriate question in each of the sets of questions?
That's my choice, but Commissioner Turner also had a question.
Yes, I think we should add it. I just wanted how would you advise the commission to use or not use partisan data, and have you repeat the end one more time?
How would you advise the commission to use or not use partisan election data in pursuing VRA compliance and defending its work?
Yep, I think it definitely should be added. I appreciate the specificity of it, the additional conversation that it can bring. And I do see how it's already in that 7 on the 1 area, et cetera, but I just think a little more detailed conversation would be beneficial.
Are we adding it to both the litigation and to the VRA question sets, or just to litigation? Because this is more a VRA question, that's why I'm asking. And question 7's in the litigation question sets.
Angelo suggested both, but we can discuss that.
My preference would be both, because it starts in VRA and then would ultimately end up in litigation. I would like to hear how both of their groups would plan to address it.
If that's the case, we may want to put question 7 and this additional question into both the litigation and, because litigation counsel, of course, would be supporting the VRA counsel if we have litigation, and then VRA counsel obviously would be able to.
I was thinking about it for the VRA counsel. I was thinking about it to question 6, which is a similar question, a little more brief.
Oh, it looks different.
Yeah.
Question 7 of the litigation counsel interviews is actually also incorporated in question 3 for VRA in terms of creation of majority minority influence districts and coalition districts.
Yeah, that works too.
Yeah, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, you can add it to 3 then. Okay, so adding that, and then adding the question about bar memberships and how to deal with any issues those raise. Anything else? For litigation counsel, yeah, go ahead.
Would we be adding another question, or would that be follow-up? Because that doesn't apply to all candidates. That almost seems like a due diligence, conflict of interest follow-up questions. because it doesn't apply to all candidates, or are we thinking about standardizing a question for all candidates?
I guess I'm a little unclear about that because, what I keep hearing is you need to ask everyone the same questions. So if we phrase it that way.
Questions. But then you can have follow-up on the conflict of interest and background checks.
Do we know that everyone on one of the groups, I mean, unless we know for a fact that every single person on the group has the California bar, then I would ask all three. Don't assume someone has it. So, which that's why I was thinking that the question would be asked to everybody. Also,
we've checked everyone.
Yeah, we had our litigation support team check. So they verified. So we know who has and who doesn't at this point.
So would this be a process issue then, if you don't ask the same questions?
Right. So I was thinking, to ask, in the interview to confirm our findings on bar memberships, and then that would lead to the further questions for some of the firms.
To me, it seems like it's follow-up. Maybe we can ask Miriam, but to me, it seems like it's follow-up on conflict of interest and background check rather than a standardized question, because it's a requirement, right? So it's a requirement of the RFI, and we did our conflict of interest checks and we did our background check, and we're at that point just for those candidates that might have an issue, we're trying to resolve that.
That's fine.
But we should ask Marion if it would align, if our questioning should be the same for everybody, even if it doesn't apply to everybody.
Right. I agree with
that. Ms. Johnson, are you there? No.
I am.
Oh, okay. So the question is, in raising these bar membership concerns, should we have a standard question that we ask all candidates, asking them to confirm our findings on their memberships and then following up with those that raise issues, how they would deal with those issues? Or do we not ask it as a standard question, but simply follow up with each candidate as appropriate?
I think you should ask a standard question of all to verify that the information that you have is correct.
Okay. Okay, very good. Yeah, that makes sense. And, I think it's about the same, either way. It's just whether it's on the printed set of questions or not. So we'll follow it up the same either way. Okay, anything else on these questions? On the litigation counsel questions, I'm thinking of striking number 6, which is a question about independent redistricting commissions. As you all know, in 2015, the Arizona v. Arizona case seemed to confirm that independent commissions are constitutional. And so the question was, how firm do the candidates believe that decision is? I think we can strike that because HR 1 raises that question in a whole new way, and I'm not sure it will add much to this process to hear a response to that at this time.
Commissioner Kennedy.
So rather than striking entirely, maybe another approach would be to reorient the question to focus instead on HR 1 provisions and what we might face in the future as a result of HR 1.
Yeah, I might add, I was hoping that question would be added to both the VRA and the litigation, because as we know, we're already talking about how could it impact the VRA. So I would definitely like to see that question about that on both the VRA and the litigation. Commissioner Turner.
Just a quick process question. Your interviews, how long are they scheduled for?
50 minutes. or 1 hour. Yeah.
So we're going to have to prioritize.
We're counting on lawyers talking fast.
And we did start off, I think, with like 12, 13 questions on each, and we brought it down to the ones that were we found to be the most important, but we did have many more. We had to bring these down.
You know, one thing I might say on that is if they know they have an hour and these are the questions, they're getting the questions beforehand?
That's right.
Yes. So attorneys need, the judge is only going to give them so much time. So they need to be able to answer these. And that's sort of another, as I see it, that's a bit of a check on, can they address the issues in a timely manner? Commissioner Fernandez.
Does the 1 hour include any follow-up questions you may have? Or is it everything supposed to be done in an hour, including
Everything in an
follow-up?
hour. That's right.
They have an
Including
hour.
follow-up?
Yes.
I don't know. I'll just jump in. So I don't know. I wanted to come back to this question on question 6, the Arizona v. Arizona, and Commissioner Kennedy's point around bringing up HR1. So HR1 isn't law. It's passed in the House. But I understand the point, right? Like, I think what this question is asking is, it's very possible that someone could try to bring challenges specifically to challenge the notion of independent redistricting commissions. That's what Arizona was doing, that case. So I think perhaps if we can reword it in such a way that it could cover either the Arizona case or the possibility of HR1 moving forward, and what world we might live in which there could be potential litigation challenges that could bring down the existence of independent redistricting. I think if we can come up with a different way of rewording it, that might be sufficient and kind of hit both sides of this question. And I'm happy to take a closer look at what that might look like.
I do worry about asking the 2 questions. It ends up being 2 questions if we reword it, I think, because when we're asking about Arizona v. Arizona, and then we're asking about HR1, and they're 2 different related but different sets of issues as well.
But what if it's a question about what do you see as potential litigation challenges to independent redistricting nationwide, something along those lines, right? And,
Yep.
and the response could be talking about Arizona, could be talking about HR1, it could be.
I would support that.
Commissioner Kennedy.
And I would prioritize asking about HR1 over asking about recent changes on the Supreme Court. I mean, the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court, and I wouldn't cast it in terms of, or I wouldn't cast it around the recent changes in the Supreme Court. I think I would get more from an answer that said, okay, we've generally considered independent redistricting commissions to be unconstitutionally safe ground since Arizona versus Arizona. How might HR1, if passed into law, change that?
Yeah, I would be more concerned with what's going to affect us right now. The idea of the future of independent redistricting, I think, is a very valid issue, but the Supreme Court's effect on that, I really don't think is going to happen between now and our getting our maps out. It might happen and we might be dissolved later, but I don't think that's going to hit the first couple of years of our job. So that's where I'd prefer it going to HR1.
I can support that. And I think the piece that Commissioner Kennedy raised, that suggestion of language is excellent. But I mean, to that point, we're hiring a litigation firm who's going to have to take on these kinds of future challenges for us, right? This is one way to bring down our maps, is to say that we shouldn't have the authority to engage.
I believe Marion has her hand up.
Yeah, Marion.
Apologies for being in and out, but I think I'm here now. I don't know if you've all had a chance to look at the HR1 analysis I sent. It was pretty late last night. But one of the questions, if you're going to be asking about HR1, is what its effect will be on this commission's activities if it passes. And I pointed out 3 particular issues that the commission would have to face. So that is a nuance that you might want to look into.
I believe one of those included redistricting criteria. Is that correct?
Well, the redistricting criteria, I think that probably you'll be okay with. It was, if you are allowed to follow your criteria in addition to those listed in HR1 for independent commissions that already exist, that is one of the issues. The other 2 issues are what happens if you don't draw a map, who it goes to, and it would change it from being the California Supreme Court to the U.S. Supreme Court. And right now I can't think of what the 3rd point was, but I will. It's in the memo.
If I can, it was on how many
the voting
members from each of the pools would be required to pass the maps.
Correct. And it would be a much lower standard than what the California Commission now operates under. Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing that we do want to keep the question, rewording it per Commissioner Sadwani and Commissioner Kennedy's language, and adding it as well to the VRA Council questions.
Can we hear the question again? Can you? Because I'm in support of it. I'm just trying to remember what the language was.
What I heard was, after Arizona v. Arizona, we've generally considered independent redistricting commissions to be on constitutionally safe ground. How would you advise the commission? I'm sorry, what do you see as possible challenges to independent redistricting commissions nationally? But then
I thought we were going to refocus it on HR1. That was my understanding. I may have misunderstood though.
I think actually that's correct. And I don't think I wrote down that version. Commissioner Kennedy, would you want to repeat what you had?
I don't think I can come up with it verbatim, but it was basically, if HR1 were to become law, how might this affect how might this affect the commission in the future?
Although it could be the present as well. Right?
Yeah, I would say both now and in the future.
I consider future to be anything from 10 minutes from now onward, basically.
Or maybe we don't even need to specify time. So if HR1 becomes law, then how might this affect the commission?
Right.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sadwani.
I like that. And I actually don't feel like we need to add this to the VRA questions. It's an important question, but it's not specific to the VRA. The VRA, I think if we want to ask about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which hasn't even been introduced yet, or the current case before Arizona, if that undid Section 2, for example, that might make sense. But given the vast number of questions we already have for the VRA, I feel like having this for litigation is sufficient because it's not exactly VRA related. We wouldn't be asking our VRA counsel to represent us if there are any HR1 claims in the future.
I seeing the number of questions and the quality of the questions, I certainly see that point. It would be interesting though to make sure that they are up with HR1, expecting them to say, well, it doesn't really contain the VRA, or it only partially mentions it, and the VRA would be in HR4. I would kind of like them to see how up on the whole issue they are, but that's a preference. I do see that we have a lot of questions here that are very, very good. If there's a lag, I would certainly put it in. Not anticipating that, though. Any other questions from the commission? All right, please continue. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Fornaciari.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking for different questions. I have a different question, but
Right. Are you entertaining the different questions at this time? Yes.
Sure.
yeah, sorry, and I apologize. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I apologize. I was late, and you may have already discussed this, but I have one thing. In reading the applications for the VRA applicants, it seemed to me that some of the applicants were always on one side of the issue, and some of the applicants were always on the other side of the issue or the cases that they brought forward. And so you're kind of getting at that in question one, but to me, I'd like to see the word balanced in there, right? So how can they balance kind of both perspectives if they've only been litigating one side or the other of these cases? And maybe I'm wrong, but that was kind of my reading of it.
I think we can certainly add the word balance. The public must have a high level of trust and confidence in counsel's ability to provide objective, balanced, non-partisan advice to the commission. This was actually the main concern in 2010 that generated the most controversy between the various applicants, the selection between them. One perceived as being a Republican leaning and another perceived as being Democrat leaning.
Yeah, and I'm not, certainly it can be partisan, but I think both parties have violated the Voting Rights Act, right? In some way or other, right? So I kind of see it, there's partisanship in it too, but it's also kind of a balanced perspective on the Voting Rights Act.
Definitely. And, if you look at the verification reports, you'll see political contributions, which definitely lean, this way and that.
Thank you, Commissioner Fornaciari. I really like that suggestion, and I think that makes perfect sense to add the word balanced to that first question, as Commissioner Yee identified.
Okay, shall we move on? I think we have 10 minutes to break, and perhaps we can finish this in that time. So the last bit is the evaluation worksheet. So this was our move away from numerical scoring, instead identifying 9 areas to rate. And we did add some a kind of scoring through, rating each area as exceeds requirements, meets requirements, or lags requirements. And the idea would be for each of the 3 legal affairs committee members to individually review the candidates and to rank the pool. And then next Wednesday, a week from today, when we actually discuss and try to come to a recommendation to use those rankings and further input from the interviews, of course, to jointly develop our recommendation, which would need to be unanimously agreed upon. The DAG advised us that it's a fairly low standard. We need to simply not appear capricious and arbitrary in our decision, which I think will be easy to achieve. So any feedback on the evaluation worksheet? It's pretty wide. It's pretty open-ended as intended.
Commissioner Ahmad?
Just a quick question on that evaluation worksheet. Would those be made public after the interviews? Or is this personnel related, so therefore it's confidential?
Good question. Marion?
Everything related to your selection of contractors, which is, in effect, what this is public. There's no personnel exception.
Does that, so following up, does that require that we later post our
If you don't,
individual score?
if you discuss them during a public meeting, then they have to be posted,
So with our comments, with our individual ratings,
right?
our rankings, yeah. Oh.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Wait, sorry, I just need to clarify. They are public, but they would only need to be posted if discussed in open public meeting.
Correct.
And they absolutely will be discussed. I mean, that's the whole point. So I think, yeah.
Okay.
So that means we would need to post them for the 24th then. So.
Well, I don't know, are you going to fill them out privately and then come together to discuss them, or what's your plan?
So my understanding was that we were going to do the scoring together in public, and that it wasn't going to be done individually. Was my understanding as we were thinking through that, but I know that we're still kind of figuring that out as we discuss.
Well, it's the discussion in public session that makes them become public. So it's how you operate. If you each have your individual ones, but what you discuss in public session is your joint one, then it's only your joint one that becomes public.
So and that's what I was thinking, that we would be discussing our joint our scoring, right? So we'd be discussing essentially the joint scoring of the applicants.
So as long as so of course we're going to make private notes to ourselves as we review the applicants, but anything we bring up in public discussion, we can then put into the public worksheet that we discuss and have posted.
That sounds right.
Commissioner Fernandez.
No, I was just going to clarify that, like your individual notes would not necessarily be public. It's what you discuss on the one sheet. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So actually, I'll do a clarification question as well. If each of them, fill out this sheet and then together create one, it's only the one that they create together that gets discussed and published, I guess, and posted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It sounds like a good plan to me.
Okay.
And I would be happy to take notes if need be during our public discussion of these criteria, so that it can be posted if we need it.
Any other questions? I like it, by the way. My opinion on all of these questions and the form is it's very thorough, very well thought through, and I think the committee has done a very good job for the commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
So
that's all we have, I believe.
Any other questions or comments from any other commissioner? Seeing none. Thank you very much to the committee, and best of luck on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Those are could you please run through the timing of that for us?
Oh, let's So Monday, we have the VRA Council applicants. Primcard, UCLA, and Strumwasser Wucher. And then Tuesday, we have the litigation candidates, Gibson Dunn, who was the 2010 Commission's counsel, Renee, Public Law Group, and Strumwasser Wucher again. They were the only ones who applied to both.
So it's 9:30 on Monday, the 22nd, and then again, 9:30 on Tuesday, the 23rd, also 9:30 on the 24th.
Right. So Monday, Tuesday interviews from morning through about 2 p.m. and then a couple hours of discussion following probably. Tuesday, same thing. And then Wednesday is discussion and decision.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Sinai.
Just a friendly reminder that just a friendly reminder, not to be too, I guess I'm saying I'm feeling a little uncomfortable that we just announced at 2010. Yeah, that was the legal counsel for 2010, and just a friendly reminder that that's good and bad, and indifferent, just to look at all of them equally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I certainly didn't mean to favor or disfavor Gibson Dunn on that basis.
Well, thank you very much. That basically wraps up most of our agenda. If we'd like to go over our last items of business, which now I have to bring the agenda up again. Basically, I believe that is just the future meeting dates and agenda items. We've just heard about the legal affairs meetings dates. Tomorrow from 4 to 8 in the afternoon or early evening will be the Public Input Meeting Design Subcommittee. And we, of course, invite all the public, as usual, to watch any and all of our meetings. We could go over those are the next meetings to come about. Then, in terms of our currently scheduled future meeting dates, the next one, it will be March 29 and April 1st. We then do have more posted, and they are listed, but that is to bring your attention. The entire list of upcoming meeting dates and times is on our website. And please note that we are starting several of the meetings rather than at 9:30 in the morning. Some of them start at 1 in the afternoon. And often on Wednesdays are the Public Input Meeting Design Committee tends to meet from 4 to 8 on Wednesdays. And so please have a look for your calendar. We actually have our calendars out. The dates are up on the website from March through most of May. And with that, any other comments or items from the commission? Commissioner Ahmad.
Thank you, Chair. Just circling back to an update from you about line drawers and the process of that, if you have an update to share with us. You're on mute.
Thank you. Unfortunately, no. The only information that we have is that the Office of Legal Services asked a little bit more questions about budget items, and that's all we have. So we're unfortunately, no, I don't have they're on board yet. So as soon as we get that information, that will certainly be posted to the website, as well as go out to all the full commission. Now, so with that, I would like to, before we end the meeting, we always end with public comment. So Katie, could you please read the instructions for public comment?
Yes, Chair. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted to enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed, it is 918-3469-1695 for this meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you'll be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9. This will raise your hand, indicating you wish to comment for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk. Please press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public record. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. And the commission is taking their end of the day public comment at this time, and we do not have anybody in the queue.
Thank you, Katie. Commissioner Kennedy, I saw you had your hand raised. Also, Commissioner Sinai.
I just have a quick question. I know that there was mention yesterday of contacts with CACEO for a panel. If you need any help with contacts with them, just let me know.
And Commissioner Sinai?
Yesterday we talked about different partnerships to try to help with outreach, and in following up with staff, some of them during the census did happen. Some of the partnerships with like CPUC and Starbucks and others, but it was done through the governor's office or the Secretary of State's office. And so a question we have is, does the Government Affairs Committee want to take that on, or do you want the Outreach Subcommittee to continue moving on those partnerships where we may need to talk to the Secretary of State or Governor's office?
I think either way, if I can jump in, either way, we've definitely been in touch both with the Governor's office and the Secretary of State's office. So happy to put you in touch with them if you want to be in touch directly. Either way is fine for us. I mean, I'm speaking for you, Pedro, but I think either way is fine.
I would suggest possibly an intro and then hand it off to the outreach committee, since that way you don't, it's sort of separating the tasks. But obviously the introduction would be essential.
Chair, the instructions are complete, and there is also no one in the queue at this time.
All right, thank you very much. And it is a little past the break time. I did notice that, but I realized as we're almost wrapping up the day, I thought we could push it a little bit. Normally when I say that we get a caller in.
Not this time.
All right. Well, then I believe it's barring no other hands raised, it's time to adjourn the meeting. Any other questions before we go? No? Thank you very much, and I adjourn this meeting.